in times of war, or at least when your government tells you that you're going to be going to war and you have hostilities and you have enemies all around you, it's really important to have information to know if those elites are telling you the truth or not. Now, U.S. senators have decided that Twitter is not allowed to carry the accounts of Iranian officials and Iranian journalists, meaning their viewpoint is not allowed to be placed into the public because, they say these two top Iranian officials are particularly facing sanctions. And because of the sanctions, Twitter is not allowed to broadcast them. We're not allowed to hear it. And the U.S. government is looking to prevent these people from being on social media to give a counter information to what's being fed to us by the U.S. government, essentially the U.S. imperialist war machine. So what they're trying to do is have it so that Twitter will not be allowed to carry those individuals or have their views seen, despite the fact that an Obama-era provision exempted certain social media platforms from being targeted by sanctions. So if you have sanctions against a country, those sanctions do not extend to Twitter and some other social media sites, meaning they're exempt from that, so that in the idea of having an open internet where you can hear from anyone you want, essentially a kind of net neutrality before net neutrality actually died. So essentially there are four main Republicans that are calling for this ban on any dissenting speech. Four Republican lawmakers insisted in a joint letter that Twitter is aware of these counts and their links to the Iranian regime, yet continues to provide them internet-based communication services, the senator said, calling it a sanctionable offense. Now, the four Republicans are Senator Ted Cruz, Marsha Blackburn, Tom Cotton, and Marco Rubio. These are all very well-known Republican figures within the U.S. government. Now, the threats follow a concerted campaign across several social media platforms to purge any Iranian officials from them, anybody affiliated with them or any individual entities or even sometimes journalists who are in favor of particular governments like Venezuela. Syrian entities, Iranian entities, and Venezuelan officials have been banned from the social media platform at the request of the United States government, despite the fact that this is very clearly an issue of free speech. If the United States, the primary imperialist power in the world, is carrying out hostilities against these countries, then those countries certainly do have a right to answer accusations that are made against them, to answer the hostilities that the U.S. is placing on them. However, the U.S. is using its hegemonic role in the technology sector and the online sector in general to censor these individuals so that we don't hear what's going on. We don't hear these people defending themselves and allowing them to speak in their own voice. Essentially, what the United States is trying to do is make it so that the U.S. is the only one who has the freedom of speech, not everybody else. And didn't we just see this with Julian Assange, where the U.S. declared that a part of his extradition was that he didn't have any freedom of speech rights in the U.S. because he's not a U.S. citizen. So that when somebody outside the U.S. who has their own freedom of speech rights are not allowed to say anything under U.S. law. So if the U.S. doesn't like what you're doing doesn't like what you're saying in another country, they're declaring that they have a right to go after you because you don't have a right to free speech in the U.S., even though you have a right to free speech in the country to where you said it. So the rights granted by the U.S. don't extend outside the borders, but the U.S. laws can be applied outside borders. So obviously this is a very nonsense position to take. The U.S. just can't decide that you, as a citizen of another country, have no right to free speech. Maybe not under U.S. law, but under another country's law you do, where the U.S. government has no jurisdiction and its laws have no jurisdiction. And we're seeing the same thing here. The U.S. is using its hegemonic position within information technology, particularly with regards to the internet and the corporate domination of the internet right now, in order to silence any dissent from imperialist aggression. And this is something that should be defended. This is part of the larger struggle for freedom of speech and struggle against censorship that, frankly, much of the world will be facing in the next coming years. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.